Good morning, everybody. Chapter 21. Happy Friday. It's going to be a good day, a great day. Here we go. Ha. Okay. Chapter 21. Looking and seeing. The thief is way more ruthless than we thought. It was 9 o'clock a.m. and Calder and Petra were sitting in Calder's kitchen drinking hot chocolate. His parents were out grocery shopping. I'll bet if we called the police, Delia Dell would be searched today. And if the painting is there, they'd have a better chance of finding it than we would. The other things we can do is tell our parents and leave it up to them. Petra didn't sound particularly happy about either idea. Calder, absorbed in his own thoughts, grinned. We could also tell no one. I can see the headlines now. Kids locate missing Vermeer, or kids brilliantly track down Vermeer masterpiece, or kids lead discouraged FBI agents to Calder. Come on. How can you think about fame? What would be best for the lady? Petra closed her mouth in a tight big sister kind of line. To be found, said Calder, folding his arms across his chest and looking sulky. You'd like to be the one on the news, too. Petra paused to think about seeing herself on a talk show or having her picture on the front of the Chicago Tribune. Maybe, she said in a kinder voice. I vote we try to find it ourselves today, and if we don't, we talk to our parents and the police tonight. Fine. I think we should call Miss Sharp first. Why? Calder had pulled the eye pentomino out of his pocket and was flipping it back and forth on the table. Because the letter sounds like her talking. We know it's not. She's in the hospital, and besides, she would never harm a Vermeer. She might help us. Petra gave her mug a decisive tap with her spoon. We'll tell her what happened in Delia Dell. That will make her curious. Then, if she knows something, maybe she'll blurt it out. Both were looking at the eye. What is it saying? Petra asked. Instant, Calder said. Guess that means get going. They called the hospital and asked for Miss Sharp's room. When she answered, Petra said, Calder and I were spending some time in Delia Dell Hall yesterday. And? Miss Sharp's voice could cut through steel. The letter in the paper, we're worried. There was silence on the other end. Miss Sharp? We just didn't want you to worry about us. Don't flatter yourselves. Why should I worry? Before Petra could tell her about the zap on the staircase, the old woman said, Just be careful. Looking and seeing are two very different things. The phone line went dead. Calder left his parents a note. He and Petra put on their coats and headed for the campus. They hurried in through the side door of Delia Dell. Petra skidded on the wet floor tiles. Her feet went out from under her, and she came to a painful stop in front of one of the benches. Scrambling to her knees, she looked up into a man's face. He had eyebrows so thick that they hung precariously over his eyes, which seemed far too small for the size of his face. Slippery stuff, is it not? The man's voice was low and pleasant. He had a foreign accent. These old floors are terrible when they're wet. But wonderful building, very wonderful. There's a pentomino in there. And at least one frog. We'll probably argue which letter the pentomino is. Don't worry about it for now. Just find the two you think it is, and then it will make sense when everything's over. Did you find him? He smiled at Petra, his eyes almost vanishing beneath the outcropping of hair. He offered her a large hand. You two were visiting the other day. No? Vermeer, something about this man was familiar. Petra was on her feet. I'm fine, she blurted, and shoved Calder back out the door in front of her. Great. That man noticed us, and you acted all nervous. Now what? What was I supposed to do? Ask him which way to the Vermeer? Did you recognize that voice? I think it was the man from the post office. What man? Calder asked. The guy who stepped on Miss Sharp's letter. Well, whoever he is, we could just have kept going. If he didn't stick out before, we sure do now. This was the closest they had come to having a fight. Petra's elbows were sore, and she was mad at herself, and she knew Calder was right. After all, the man might just be nobody. Wait, said Calder, I have an idea. I think I remember a basement entrance. They walked quickly around the east side of the rambling building. There, miraculously, was a small door half a flight up behind a walled area. The door was propped up with a dented trash can. Wow. If anyone asks us what we're doing, we'll explain that we're making a plan of the building for school. Calder didn't sound as confident as he was trying to feel. Let's get out paper and pencil so it looks like we're really working on something, added Petra. And armed with the materials, they crept closer. It was hard to see into the darkened doorway. They paused outside, listening, then peered around the corner. There was no one in sight. They tiptoed down the long corridor that curved to the left and then to the right. Swinging doors opened into a room with a single light bulb overhead. Once inside, they were faced with 3 possible exits. They picked one in the middle. Ew. Calder stepped over some nasty pile of garbage and smelled of sour milk and sneakers. Petra kept her mitten over her nose. They were soon in a maze of small passageways. What direction do you suppose we're going in? Calder asked, looking around at the peeling paint. No idea, but I want it to be up, said Petra. They found themselves at a fork. To their relief, one direction led to an iron stairwell. They hurried toward it. On the second floor, a diamond-shaped window looked into a hall. I can't see much. You try. Excuse me. Calder stepped aside. At that moment, a blue sweater flashed by. Both kids ducked. Petra hit Calder in the nose with her hair clip. Petra, watch what you're doing, will you? Calder forgot to whisper, and the sweater reappeared, pausing for several seconds on the other side of the door before going on. Calder, that looks just like my dad's sweater. I've got to peek out. Well, what do we say if it's him? He'll ask what we're doing here. I don't know, but I need to see if it's my dad. They went as quickly as they could down the hallway, past several offices. When they reached the corner, they saw the man in the blue sweater walking up the stairs to the 3rd floor, carrying a smallish rectangular package. The man was definitely Frank Andely. Weird, Petra whispered. What would he be doing here? He sometimes works Saturdays, but on the other side of campus. Petra was remembering her dad's anger that morning and the way he had pounded the table. She also remembered his words. Aren't you glad that you aren't responsible for saving one of the world's masterpieces from a maniac? The word maniac echoed in a frightening way in her mind. Did he feel that he was responsible? Maybe he had stumbled into something he shouldn't have, and that was what had made him so grumpy lately. She remembered him muttering the words, alone, or had it been alone? Either way was spooky, and then and there was the talk about the 2 mysterious letters, and also what she had overheard him saying that fall to her mom. Everyone had something to hide. Seeing how miserable Petra looked, Calder patted her on the back. I'm sure he has some good reason for being here. Stashing backpacks and jackets in a window seat, they began exploring the 2nd floor of Delia Dell. During the next half hour, they tapped, they studied, they pressed, they poked, they leaned, they tugged, they opened, they closed. Several closets appeared, walls creaked, but there was no sign of the painting. Petra couldn't concentrate. I just can't imagine what business he'd have in Delia Dell, she said. He'd be wondering the same if he saw you. And that package he was carrying was just the right size. Petra suddenly felt very tired of suspecting people. First Miss Sharp, then Miss Hussey, then both of them, and now her dad. Calder seemed to pick up on her thoughts. Sneaking around and trying to figure people out isn't as much fun as I thought it would be, he said. Looking through one of the windows, she saw her dad and the man in the post office cross the parking lot. Calder, they're together. Petra noticed that her dad's shoulders were hunched and his hands were stuffed in his pockets. He was no longer carrying the package. Bum, bum, bum. All right. Chapter 22, 12s. I will see you on Monday to hopefully finish those chapters, because 22 is where it gets real for real. Okay. How are you going to do on the test on Monday? On Tuesday? You're going to do your best. You're going to do great. You're going to score high. You're going to win. So have a great day. I'll see you all next week. I'll be on campus. I'll make sure to say hi.